Welcome to this episode of Kingology with your host Mark and Anthony. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, Mark. Glad to be back with you today.
Yeah, it's great. Last time we recorded was Thinner, and that was episode 24. So now we're on to episode 25, The Mist. Now, this is the first story in the Skeleton Crew set of short stories by Stephen King. This is the longest one in that set. We decided to split this off because it's quite a significant story and fun story actually in the Stephen King canon. And it also exists as a reasonably well-known film directed by Frank Darabont. So what we're going to be doing is talking about the written story, a little about a 3D adaptation, and then talking about the movie. And then next time we record, we'll probably do the rest of the Skeleton Crew. Maybe we do it in a few parts because there's quite a lot of stories in the Skeleton Crew. So, and it'd be nice to give them a little bit of air rather than cram them all in. But we'll see how that goes. Okay, so it was actually first published in another horror anthology called Dark Forces in 1980, which I didn't know, but then it says this is all Wikipedia, by the way. It says there was a slightly edited version included in King's collection Skeleton Crew, so apparently it was a slightly longer version in the original cut, but I wasn't aware of that. Anthony, can you remember how you came to this?
How I came to The Mist, it's always been on my list. This is a first time read for me.
Oh, okay.
I've had Skeleton Crew is something I've dipped into. I just sort of have read stories at random in there, but I had never read The Mist. I've had the audio production, which we'll talk about later, the 3D audio production, which is an abridgment and a dramatization. But never read the story.
Okay, so this was new to. I read it quite a while ago. It was very early days for me. I think I was certainly, I'd say it's probably in the first 5 Stephen King books I read, and I started reading Stephen King around pretty much a couple of years after Carrie came out. So I've been a Stephen King reader for a long time.
Wow.
So I don't think I read it as a book when it came out, but I read it probably soon after that. Though having said that, I'm pretty sure I read Night Shift first, so I was kind of more familiar with Night Shift. I was aware that I dipped into his short stories via Night Shift first, so maybe it's not quite as far back as I think, but it's quite a way back in the past for me. Yeah,
Night Shift was formative Stephen King for me. That was one of my big introductions, that and The Dead Zone.
Oh, okay. Night Shift's a nice one. It's one we've already covered, but some of my very favourite work by Stephen King is in Night Shift. But I'm really quite looking forward to getting back into Skeleton Crew as well. Okay, so first, Rick, what was your impressions of this? This is, you're new to this. What was your impressions?
Well, because I'm going into it with the imprint of the movie in my mind, I enjoyed it. I felt like this is a case, kind of like they say about a novel like Rosemary's Baby, that if you've seen the book, if you've read the book, you've seen the movie, and vice versa. Yeah. It fleshes things out a bit. So, when you get to the movie, there's so many sort of shortcuts, exposition and fleshing out of scenes that really aren't necessary for a cinematic version of it, but we can talk about that later. But the book just, I was very impressed with it. And I think the big takeaway for me from the book is how creative King was with visualizing these monsters. And you really appreciate the creativity of them when you see the film, because the things that go on in the book are rendered pretty accurately in the movie, and they are very cool. All these exotic creatures and their abilities. It's kind of like Stephen King, the creature designer, but in novel form, and it is very impressive when you think about it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say the creatures in the book certainly remind me of some of the creatures we encounter. That he's kind of cool at creating these kind of hybrid creatures. And some of the creatures in the book, The Mist, certainly remind me of some of the ones we encounter in the Dark Tower series. For example, the lobstrosities in the Dark Tower series. There's some sort of weird hybrid thing, and we get a fair bit of that in the Mist, actually. But I actually think that the book influenced a lot of video games. I can definitely feel a sort of Mist vibe in things like Half-Life and Silent Hill, somewhat. So I think that there were video games designers, writers who were kind of either directly or sort of just in the ether were influenced by the Mist. Is my feeling on it.
Interesting. The Mist, the movie, do you think? Because the movie was, 2007?
No, this was before the movie. I'm talking about games before the movie, actually.
Okay. I'm kind of game illiterate for a lot of gaming.
These were early games. Maybe not Half-Life, actually, but certainly Silent Hill was. So I also think, Stephen King sort of says his inspiration for this was there was a very sort of a storm and a mist that knocked out his house, and he went and got some stuff from the local supermarket. And for some reason, he envisaged a sort of a pterodactyl-like creature in the store when he was in there. He kind of just imagined it, and that kind of spurred this whole story on. It's interesting.
Yeah, I had read about that too. There was a big thunderstorm that made an impression on him, and then he was looking for hot dog buns in the supermarket, and he imagined like a flying, pterodactyl type of creature in the store. And apparently, by the time they were checking out, he had like kind of the structure of a whole story in his head. Pretty amazing.
Yeah, in many ways, it's kind of quite an allegorical story. We'll get into that in a bit, but you can kind of see that. Yeah, this little supermarket setting is really good for this kind of length novel, actually, and what happens is very cool. One of the weaknesses in terms of the Mist for me, certainly each time I read it, I kind of feel this, is I feel like it takes a bit too long to get to the supermarket. It's something the film kind of addresses by cutting that right down.
Yes.
Do you feel it? Did you notice any lag at the beginning? Did you feel like it was taking the time getting going?
It didn't feel like lag to me. It didn't make me impatient. I did notice that there was more, development of that original, that beginning of the story, the description of the storm, the experience of the storm in the house, where it's completely shortcut in the story. You see it's almost like, dialogue-free storytelling where you see him in the home painting. He walks away, the tree comes through the window, and then they wake up to the aftermath, where there's many pages getting us even to that point in the book.
Yeah, it was kind of, there was a lot more development of the wife, for example, in the book. She's only at the beginning in both forms, so the fact that she's around longer sort of helps her development. And the character of Norton was kind of quite well realised, and the antipathy between Norton and David also was kind of well developed. Though I think they did a reasonably good job at sort of shortcutting that in the film. To set up the same dynamic, but it was quite well explored. And there was little touches like how the guy leapt over his wife a little,
that's right,
and stuff like that. And also he was talking about how he was expecting him to turn up with a younger model kind of wife or girlfriend, and he didn't. And King was kind of exploring that. It's a very well written story all round, actually. I think it's quite impressively written.
It is. The other thing that I took away from it, again, my framework being the movie, is that I think it makes less of Mrs. Carmody in the book. Mrs. Carmody, the religious kook, where she figures much more prominently, just a much bigger source of conflict in the movie. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say so. I think she's a different type of nut.
Yeah.
In the book, I think she's more just a more general nutcase. She's got these ideas of what's happened. Whereas in the movie, she's much more developed as like an Old Testament fire and brimstone character. And I think she's much more one-dimensional in the book, actually. Usually it's the other way around, isn't it? When you get a sort of conversion to a movie, the movies will often simplify a character.
Yeah, I guess my only complaint about her is that while she is a rich source of conflict, she's a type that King recycles. She's basically Carrie's mother planted into the store.
Yeah,
it's basically who she is. And I don't know if this is, the way King repeats himself with, bullying. Bullying shows up over and over in so many stories. This is something that happens, and sometimes you feel like King, I don't know if he's just simply trying to represent like an experience he had with like the really fringe, nutty people, or if it's a statement on Christianity. If it's a statement on Christianity, it's a little bit unfair. If it's just the kind of fringe, kooks that are, like this woman's a total nutter,
she. I didn't feel specific about Christianity, though. Those elements do come in the book, but I feel it's more like it's a case of she's got an ear of people and she starts to like believe her own. Press almost, though I don't think she ever disbelieved her own press. I think she always believed whatever she was saying, and she's like one of the old town people that's got all these sort of folklore kind of remedies and stuff like that. And the wife, it's interesting that the wife set up as believing her, which sets up quite an antipathy between her and David once he gets to the store and she starts doing her thing. Though I think that antipathy would have been there anyway. I don't think the wife believing it necessarily crystallised as such. I just thought it was a kind of, this woman, he obviously doesn't think much of her before this, and he doesn't think much of her once it happens,
No, but that's a great point that you raise. You're reminding me that in the book, she's a, first of all, more elderly woman than the actress who played her in the film. But she's got this weird mingling of biblical theology and folklorish, and folk remedy and folk healing type of stuff. It's just a weird, pastiche of all that stuff where you don't get that in the movie, but it helps explain in the book that she is a particular form of kook, So,
and when the horrific things start happening, she kind of gets that power, because I think what she says kind of starts to ring true with people. Like I say, I found the sort of all the lead up getting to the store a little slow for my taste, though I find it. I always kind of enjoy King when he goes off on his little rambles. Or mostly I do. So I was kind of fine with that. Because I've read it before, I was kind of itching to get to the store just to remember. I couldn't quite remember what happens in the events. There's a certain pleasure with The Mist is I can't quite remember the order of events, so it always feels kind of fresh to me because of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And this is a movie, with most movies actually, I kind of like to let them breathe for a while. I kind of want to come back to them after a couple of years, kind of forgetting and there being a newness to it. I think of it as, I don't want to chew the sugar totally out of the gum. And so,
yeah, I know what you mean.
But I know what you mean. This one, there's so many different events that it's hard to remember the sequence of it. It's a little bit of a jumble. So it's enjoyable. I had a great time watching the movie last night, but I'm jumping ahead.
Yeah. It's hard. It's very hard because some of the things I think the thing is, some of the good things that in the book are really well realised in the movie. So it's kind of hard not to bring the movie in. We'll try and resist, but we can't see how it goes. I did like there was the husband also. Before the storm kicked off, was saying he was looking at like the Thunderheads and he was saying, "Nah, they're not going to go this time." He kind of realised that was happening. When they get to the store, the fog rolls in, And there's a chap runs in who's bloody and tells them there's stuff out there. And then a lady says she's left her children, she has to leave. And that sets up a really interesting dynamic in that it's obvious everyone in the store is scared to go out there. So much so none of them will walk this lady home, as she puts it. I kind of liked the fact that, it made them feel bad for being scared, but not bad enough to actually think, oh, this is nonsense, I'm gonna go out there.
It did because it was exactly, it shows you how frightened they are for rational reasons, and it makes you not feel judgmental against anyone in particular. She's obviously worried for her kids, but anyone in the right mind has been shown enough to feel like this is like a suicide mission going out there.
Yeah, and they even tried to sort of reason with her, don't they? Come on, lady, you don't really want to go out there. But she still goes. It did make me think as I was watching it, reading it and also watching the film, I'm going to have to bring it in, how much some of this may have been an inspiration to the recent Stranger Things. Which it never occurred to me when I was watching Stranger Things, but it just felt like, these other dimensional monsters just felt like, there's a link up there. So it was kind of, spotting that connection as I was reading, it was kind of cool.
On that point, Mark, and this is a little bit of an aside, but on those interdimensional creatures and the connectivity you pointed out with the Gunslinger series, do you think we're tapping the same dimension that he explores in what is it called? From a Buick 8? Is that the name of it?
I haven't read that, so I can't really comment on it. I certainly feel like we're tapping some of the dimensions that hit Roland. There's something. This is like the King multiverse, part of the King multiverse, in my opinion, of, all these different things happening in different places. These monsters, there's no intelligent monsters here, are there? They're just dumb monsters.
These are just oversized bugs and lizards and then obviously enormous monsters. Lovecraftian.
I've got that word in my notes, Lovecraftian. It certainly felt Lovecraftian. There were certain elements. Certainly when the Lovecraft stories are about exploring extra dimensions rather than, often Lovecraft's about mixed, strange interspecies breeding and tainted bloodlines, stuff like that. But there's another strand of his work where it's about, other dimensions, and this felt like it was part of that, actually.
I just pulled up I was researching the name of that book. It is from a Buick 8. I was kind of not remembering if that was the right number. But up came some stuff that compares the Buick 8, the Mist, and the Tower. So apparently there's some discussion about this interdimensional stuff and how they relate.
When we finally get to From a Buick 8, that might be something to raise again.
Yeah.
And certainly the Dark Tower stuff as well. Yeah, that'll be cool. It does feel like I really like some of the realisation of the odd monsters. The weird bugs, the weird things feeding on the bugs, and even later on in the book where they see a gigantic thing, and it seems to be being parasitized by the smaller monsters. That kind of all felt kind of genuine, and in fact, that bit made me think of Pacific Rim. In the movie Pacific Rim, they beat the giant monsters at one point, and when it's dead, they're still infested with parasites that can be exploited. Yes. And it kind of made me think, reading about the things hanging off the bigger creatures made me think of that too. And again, Pacific Rim is about monsters coming from different dimensions too.
Yeah, so. Cloverfield was like that too. You had parasites on the monster.
All right. I really liked how we had this. Firstly, we get these. There's something out there, and we're a bit worried and stuff like that, and then it goes to the scene in the back of the store with the shutters. It's quite a graphic and sort of bloody scene that King writes here, and probably almost exactly realised in the film, actually.
Very close.
And it's interesting that there's very few witnesses, so when they go and tell other people, Norton, in fact, makes the point of saying, yeah, this is you're just having a bit of fun with an out-of-towner. This is ridiculous. Why are you doing this kind of stuff? And it sets up this dynamic of disbelief. In fact, we kind of get three groups crystallise at this point. The more rational group, and with David and Ollie and a few others. We get Norton's group of disbelievers, the sort of nihilists, as it were, and then slowly creeping up there is Mrs. Commody's. I'll say that again. Mrs. Carmody's sort of group, which is pretty small but grows.
That's right.
So it's an interesting dynamic of rationalists, not skeptics, even cynics, and believers.
It's like a social experiment or a sociological case study, and so we're already setting up the divisions and the potential loyalties and where people will go under stress. Very interesting. And then as things intensify and Carmody, that whole dynamic begins to divide people when they're frightened out of their wits.
Indeed.
It's pretty interesting.
I don't want to be overly political here, and I will say I made these notes before the presidential election results, but I actually made this specific note. I can't help see the echoes of what's happening in American politics with Trump and Hillary right now. Trump seems another face of Mrs. Comedy. I wrote that a while ago, so it's kind of. I mean, obviously Mrs. Comedy's a much writ large character, much more extreme character, but this kind of this dynamic, wanting to believe in something versus rational analysis versus cynicism. It kind of feels like that's how society is now. So it's almost like this was like informing us from the part, 35 years ago about things that are kind of precipitating in the last 10 years.
Perhaps. I don't.
Or
I don't
forever, perhaps.
I don't know if I see the same dynamic that you're seeing. In principle, I see it. How it applies, that's a whole sidebar discussion about the election and all those dynamics. But there's certainly you certainly see in the intensity of an election cycle how some people are fueled by an irrationalism. I think it happens on both sides, actually. You have,
I agree.
It's a very individual thing. You have a certain kind of person that is, they're very principles oriented, and it's very much a left-brained exercise where they're able to reject people that don't square up with their principles and beliefs, versus kind of the low information voter or people who are led by their emotions more, and they can get whipped up and influenced more by everything from the stupid memes that float around and the other sound bites, or how any particular filter or prism is creating like a little bubble of or a way to look at the world. So, but I think it actually happens. I would just say it that way. It happens
whichever side you're on.
Yeah.
It can happen. Yeah, let's
for those reasons.
We'll park that for now. Anyway, was there any weaknesses in the written story?
Not really. I didn't have a cause to nitpick the story. I just kind of enjoyed it. I can't remember them now. I didn't really take notes as I was reading, but I could see the subtle differences between it and the film adaptation. But all in all, this is another Frank Darabont adaptation. This is another high fidelity, when you get to the movie, adaptation that really has its roots in the book very strongly. And I don't have any complaint with the book, and I don't have a complaint about its ambiguous ending. I prefer the ambiguous ending to what we got in the film.
Oh, indeed. I'll just point out one issue I have with the story once they get into the story. I really didn't understand the need or why it was there for the sort of basically the sex scene where David sleeps with the woman. It seemed very... I mean, one thing I kind of liked was that David was not entirely moral. Not moral. What do I want? He wasn't a nice guy through and through. He had his faults. He was a bit of a... He was when the guys at the shutter, when he was arguing with them, he was being a bit of a... Yeah, I know much more about this than you. You should do what I say, which was just it was unnecessarily confrontational in trying to explain things, which got people's backs up and made them have to prove it. And I think Ollie to me was the much more heroic, pure good guy in this.
Yeah, he was.
Whereas
he was what a great character.
He was a great character. But what I didn't like, the sex scene seemed unnecessary, particularly after all the setup with the wife and him worrying about his wife, and he had a small boy there. It just... one
it didn't ring true.
It didn't ring true, that's it.
Yeah, you're bringing it up. I didn't think I had a problem with the book, but your bringing that up reminded me that was... I had the same issue. It just seemed like a discordant note in this, and unnecessary, and it didn't really... It wasn't like... I couldn't satisfactorily, explain it as, the stress of the situation. It just seemed like some of the last things you'd be thinking about in those circumstances.
If you've got a young son, you would not be thinking about it. And especially if your wife, you're concerned about your wife. It just wouldn't happen. Now, I don't have a complaint. Often King does things that are a bit odd, and you think, I wish he hadn't have done that. But they still ring true. For example, the end of Cujo, say.
Yes.
What happens in that? It didn't ring false, it just felt like a gut punch. Whereas this, the problem was, it didn't ring true. That particular part. So, but apart from that, I was kind of pleased. And again, I'm trying to avoid talking about the film, but they excised that bit from the film quite rightly, in my opinion. One of the things I will say about the ending, I really like the ambiguous ending, and I have been waiting years for King to write a sequel, actually, but I don't think he ever will, and I've kind of got over that. But I think for the first 10 years after reading it, I assumed at some point he'd write, part 2 of The Mist, and The Mist was just part 1 of a longer story, and it never came about. But I do kind of like the ending. The ending of it does remind me a lot of the ending of Shawshank Redemption, the theme of hope. It sounds like hope. That is very Shawshank Redemption to me.
Yes.
So,
yes, it is.
And I think that might be why Darabont was attracted to doing this story. He'd done, Shawshank Redemption. There was though, having said that, he doesn't finish it in the same way at all. And we'll get to that. It's there's also some other interesting literary sort of bits and bobs in here. I like the fact that David dreams of a giant early on in the story. He actually dreams of a giant walking around, and then that becomes real.
Yes,
and there's some really nice.
He dreamed that God was walking around the town, and right, something like that.
Yeah. And it's so high up you couldn't see, and that gets echoed right at the end. And there's some also, King doesn't mind the odd gross out kind of scene. There's the bit with the shutter, but there's also the 2 soldiers found hanging, and then the whole Mrs. Comedy sort of progress. She says the sacrifice, the only salvation. I like the touch of the only salvation will be is if there's a sacrifice, and she wants the boy. That right at the end, and Ollie shoots her, which fulfills her prophecy, kinda, because she's the blood sacrifice there, and I kind of like that. But then,
yes,
Ollie, something very tragic happens to Ollie pretty soon after, which is pretty grim, actually. Quite sad to see Ollie go. But again, it rang authentic. I have no complaints about that. It was just a bit sad. I also kind of like, he gets a little meta right at the end. He actually says, my father hated movies with ambiguous endings. They were cop-outs, which sets us up for an ambiguous ending, which is nice.
That's
touch,
right.
Nice literary touch. Like I say, there's a lot of King-isms in this, isn't there? I've already mentioned that Stranger Things felt like it was borrowing a little from this, but it was actually, I think, maybe borrowing for the whole Kingism thing. Of Kingism has military experiments is a Kingism, isn't it? We've seen it in Firestarter and The Stand, and the TV show Golden Years was all about that kind of thing. So it's just something that King does. Okay, I'm not sure I've got much more to say about the story, other than I really quite enjoyed it. It's a nice story.
I did too. I liked it an awful lot.
Would you like to read more further adventures of the survivors? Or do you think it's perfect as it is?
I hadn't thought about that. It seems like maybe you were pining for a sequel because the ending was uncertain, and now there's closure by way of the movie, and so I wonder if that. I don't like the closure, but I love the world. I do like this story where, and it is another one of King's muses. This idea of tapping, opening a door to another world, and it all spilling in and dealing with that. So,
funny enough,
I would like more of that.
In some ways, I kind of see Darabont's Walking Dead as almost kind of what happened next to The Mist. In some ways, obviously, we're not talking weird, alien-esque monsters. We're talking zombies. But in many ways, it's a kind of what happens next when you have to, a small group of you have to survive in a hostile world, which is completely different from anything else you've seen before. I just feel that kind of synchronicity in material, actually. But as I say, I pined for it for about 10 years, and I thought it's never going to happen. I appreciate the story as a standalone now, and don't feel the need to read anymore.
Well, apropos of nothing, and there's no way we'd ever get to the story, but there is an unfinished story called The Plant. I don't know if you ever read it, by Stephen King.
No,
I would love for him to finish that one because it was very funny. In addition to it had a really great storyline going. It was one of King's experiments back about 15 years ago when he was writing for new technologies like the Palm Pilot and ebooks. And one of the first things he put out there this was around the time when Riding the Bullet was released as an ebook.
Say like Riding the Bullet, yes.
Yeah, and that was sort of this brave new world of mobile content. And right on the heels of that, he did a serial called The Plant, and he began putting out chapter after chapter. But he just he said, the plant is going to fold up its leaves right now, and maybe I'll revisit it one day. And I don't think he ever has, but that would be a great story to finish.
That one's not on my radar, so I'm not worried about that. But I kind of always liked his little experiments. I really like The Green Mile, for example, when that was released part by part. I thought that was great. Okay, let's rate this one. What would you give this one out of 10? Oh,
easily an 8 out of 10. Or higher.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think I'd give it an 8 out of 10 too. It's sort of 7, 8 for me. But yeah, I'm happy to go with 8. So we'll have a little break there, and we'll have a little brief discussion about the 3D audio dramatisation of The Mist.
You ready, Norm? Norm! Norm, you don't have to prove anything.
Look, just leave it be.
Something's dead out.
What's that smell? No, something else.
Hold up. Okay, Norm.
This isn't necessary. The cold cases will
Why don't you go back and tin your groceries? Leave this junk and rest.
Hey, get it off!
Jesus.
Get this friggin' thing off me!
It's a tentacle.
Help me, you guys, please!
Hey, get back, there's another one.
Help me! For God-
Okay, so the audio one, from what I've read about it, it actually was it's been available since the mid-80s. So it was done.
It has been.
Which I didn't realise. It sounded very fresh. Very fresh.
Yeah,
to
you know,
me.
my brother had a copy of it on like cassette, and I'm going back 30 years. I never heard it back then, but I was always aware of it. And I only got to listen to the 3D thing like a few years ago. I found a cheap copy of the CD, so I bought it.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to say, I made a mistake with this one. I started listening to it in the car, and it was like this. I was thinking, oh, the sound levels are terrible. You know, it keeps going quiet, and then I realised, it's 3D. Why am I listening to it in a car? So once I got it on the headphones and started again, it was way better, way better.
Oh, okay.
It's not
Yeah.
one to listen to in a car. It doesn't quite work in that way. I rather enjoyed it. I thought it was reasonably well acted and quite a good adaptation. They packed a lot in. They pretty much packed every major element of the story into an hour and 10 minutes.
It really felt like the movie in many respects.
I listened to the full story on audiobook. There was a sale on in the UK in Audible for Skeleton Crew, which was very lucky. You know, it happened to be when I was about to start reading it, so I just thought, well, what the hell, you know, it's cheap. And actually the audiobook version of The Mist is 5.5 hours, so they concatenated the story down to an hour and 10 minutes and packed it all in, including the gratuitous sex scene, which I was quite surprised. I thought that would be one of the things that would go, but no, they put it all in, and I thought it was fun. I rather enjoyed it.
It was. You know, you'll laugh. You know how I listened to the audio book, though? The actual 5-hour story?
Yeah.
Is I found a PDF that someone made of The Mist, and I did a text-to-speech thing with an MP3 generating tool. And I listened to it that way, and it was a little bit monotone, but it was not as bad as I feared. But it was the only way I would be able to find 5 hours in my life, you know, to listen to it, because I had other things to work on.
Yeah, I know the feeling. That can work. It's getting better and better, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I can see that working. In fact, when I edit my own books, I use the text-to-speech on the Apple Mac because saying out loud is really easy to hear bad phrasing or, you know, repeated words that aren't that obvious when you're actually reading it by eye. It's quite a good way of editing, actually. Anyway, I'm going off the subject there. Yeah, I really quite enjoyed this 3D version, so I'm glad I listened to it. I'd recommend it. It's Simon & Schuster selling it, but I'm not sure if it's on Audible. I didn't look, actually, but it was pretty good. You can certainly buy it on CD.
Yeah, I think you can get it at Amazon and Audible, I'm pretty certain.
Well, it started as on vinyl, so you may even be able to get it on vinyl, I'm not sure.
No, it's on CD for sure, and I'm sure the digital download is available, because I remember seeing it in the search results.
Okay. Okay, then let's I'll just say, recommend that. If you get a chance to listen to it, do so. It's a lot of fun. An hour and 10 minutes is definitely worth your time to listen to this, but not in a car. I'd say not in a car.
Not in a car.
Not in a car. Okay, let's have another little break, and we'll move on to the movie.
Whoa. Mom, Dad, you gotta come see. The boathouse is all bashed. You just gotta come on. Whoa.
Having spoken, the doomsayer departs.
Come on.
Why don't you get Billy dressed? I'll take him into town with me. Hit the store before it gets all bought out.
How'd you folks hold up in the storm?
Big insurance day.
Sorry to hear that.
What's going on? It's death.
Something in the mist! Shut the doors! Shut the doors!
The only way we're going to help ourselves is to seek rescue.
tie this around your waist?
What for?
Well, let us know you got at least 300 feet.
There's nothing out there. Nothing in the least.
What if you're wrong?
Then I guess the joke would be on me.
It is time to take sides. Read the good book. It calls for blood.
Guys, I hear something.
Are those bugs?
Not like any I've ever seen.
The entire front of this store is plate glass.
Promise you won't let the monsters get me.
What are you guys messing with up there?
I thought that there were other dimensions. They wanted to try and make a window.
Well, maybe your window turned out to be a door.
Who she's gonna sacrifice to make it all better?
We want the boy.
You try it.
Kill him!
Okay, the movie is now this was the third Stephen King story that was adapted and directed by Frank Darabont. He'd already previously done The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile, and I think he wanted to get his teeth into one, a more traditional Stephen King story. He was. I think he was interested. There was some talk, I think, of this being done in black and white. To make it look like a more traditional kind of 50s creature feature. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe in the Blu-ray you can have it in black and white.
It is. I'm holding the Blu-ray in my hand. Since you said that, I just picked it up on my desk here, and the one I have comes with the color version and the alternate black and white version.
Oh, cool.
There's a two disc set.
Have you said you watched the color one yesterday? Or last night?
I watched the color one. I've never watched the black and white one. I just felt like, I don't know, it feels like a gimmick to just, watch a desaturated version to me.
I did listen to another podcast, which I think is called the Stephen King Cast, and they talked about it a bit, because they actually talked about the black and white one. So I've got some comments about that. They said it held up and looked really nice. I'll just tell you what I said. The CGI held up better in black and white than in colour. It looked pretty good all the way through. But we'll get to the CGI in a bit. I have to say the casting of this was I thought it was a really good casting in this movie. I didn't see any weaknesses in it at all, actually.
No, I totally agree. And even though they changed some of the types of people, like I think Norton is not who you would expect.
No, he's not an old white lawyer, is he?
Right.
Liar. I mean, lawyer. Slip of the tongue there, liar.
There you go.
He's a sort of, not middle-aged, but 40s black man. But he's a lawyer still, but he's not like a 50-something, white guy lawyer. He's slightly different. But I think he worked really well. And anyone who watches The Walking Dead will recognise a lot of the cast. We got the actors who played, for example, Herschel in The Walking Dead, Carol in The Walking Dead, and Andrea in The Walking Dead.
Yeah, Jeff DeMunn, right?
Yeah,
Is in The Walking
I believe
Dead,
so. Laurie Holden,
right.
Melissa McBride.
Gabriel Pareja.
Yes. Is he in the Walking Dead?
Or Juan Gabriel?
I'm not sure if he's in the Walking Dead.
Trying to get
I can't remember now. But there were certainly several actors that Darabont then went on to reuse in The Walking Dead. So it's kind of interesting. So again, this kind of puts this connection between this and The Walking Dead in my head, perhaps. So I might be talking post... that might have influenced my thinking on that. No, it came out in, I think, 2007 in the US. Received generally positive reviews. There is a mention of him doing it in black and white. There was some thinking about in black and white. Now there are some structural changes. There's elements added. I guess we'll do that as we go through. Certainly the beginning sequence where he's with his wife is much shorter relative to the story running time than in the book.
Yes,
they really get to it. I think they're in the store within 10 minutes or something. It's really quite quick. It doesn't feel rushed, but it's pretty quick. They invite Norton to go with them. We get the sort of dynamic of their boathouse being destroyed by Norton's tree. And you certainly, in a few mentions, you get, the fact that they've had this sort of land dispute with him, and he doesn't want to get into another one. I also kind of like the Easter egg of the fact that David's an artist, and he's basically painting Clint Eastwood, isn't he?
Yeah, he's basically Drew Struzan, and I took it to be like a gunslinger.
Yeah,
poster.
it was. Yeah, I was kind of being sarcastic because King's always said he when he envisages his Roland, it's kind of Clint Eastwood. But it definitely looks like the man with no name, without a face. He doesn't actually. It hasn't painted the face at this point, so we don't see the face. But it's definitely that. And again, we get a bit meta here because he starts going on about, they don't really need it. They'll just use Photoshop to knock up, add some faces to some background, and that'll be it. Which I rang a bit. That dialogue came from someone complaining about that for sure.
Yeah.
Kind of liked it though. There was they get to the store and pretty much straight away we get the mist rolling in. There's some soldiers in the store and we get the mist rolling in and the I can't remember his name in the film, but the actor that Jeffrey DeMunn comes running in with sort of blood on his face, kind of warning there's something out.
Yeah.
We do see some characters running out to their trucks as the mist rolls over them. Good effects. I have to say the mist effects were really quite good in this.
Very, very good. Yeah. Jeffrey DeMunn, by the way, is a familiar face. He shows up in a number of Stephen King films.
He does, actually, yes. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but it's been about 4, I think. At least.
Yeah, I'll look them up in a moment. I think one of them would be Storm of the Century.
Yes.
And I can look up a few others.
I have to say, straight after that is the scene where the woman wants to go home to her children. Played unnamed character in this, but it's played by Melissa McBride, who is Carol from The Walking Dead, where she's kind of wants to get to her children. She's distressed, and no one will go with her. A phenomenal piece of acting. In my opinion, really effective. What did you think?
I'm sorry, the woman who walks her children home.
Yeah, Melissa McBride.
Yeah, very, very well done. And this replicates the scene from the book very well.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who's going to walk a woman home? Very, very good. And it sets up something that you'll notice at the end.
Indeed. Right. Yes.
Right. Which makes,
we'll get to
which just rubs more salt.
She curses them all, doesn't she? I hope you rot in hell or something like that. Just as she leaves. It's and then it kind of kicks off. The Mrs. Comedy is a sort of hasn't been mentioned, I think. In this, in the book, she was mentioned before he got to the store, but she hasn't been mentioned until this point. She just happens to be in the store. She's a fairly minor character at first. She's got these pronouncements, but no one's really paying attention. But then we roll into the scene with the shutters. I had a bit of a problem with this, with the CGI, actually. How did it look on your Blu-ray?
It's very good. You're talking about the tentacles?
Yeah.
Okay, I got distracted because I was looking at Jeff DeMunn, and I'll share that with you in a moment. They reminded me a little of the sort of the gooey creature effects in Dreamcatcher. They were okay. I didn't have a big problem with them, but I'm more aware that I'm looking at the limitations of CGI with the tentacles than I am with, say, the bugs that are, crawling around.
Yeah, I actually thought the CGI bugs were pretty good. The only problem I had with the bugs is there was like a bit of discordance between where they were on screen and where the actors were looking. They weren't quite matched up right, so you kind of became very aware the actors were acting against nothing because the eye lines and where the bugs were,
eye lines might have
things
been,
like that. But the actual CGI was fine at that point. But I did the technical look really kind of right. I wish they'd have done the tentacle practically, actually, because it just didn't work for me in terms of CGI.
Exactly. Yeah. That I had the same thought. Is that would have been an opportunity like Stan Winston was wise enough to do in Jurassic Park, where you find as many opportunities to, put in the practical tentacle. As much as you can, and then just switch when you have to.
Yeah, because when they chopped the tentacle piece off and it became a piece of rubber, it was pretty good. It looked pretty damn good. So that was kind of cool, but I did have a bit of problem. That to me was the only bit I really felt the CGI had aged badly. As I say, all the bug stuff I kind of liked. Certainly the spider stuff I really liked. It was only sometimes the eye lines were out from where the bug was. It wasn't quite matching up.
Yeah. Well, what was very cool was when the little winged creature was flying all over the store and bumping into signs and knocking things over.
That was well choreographed.
And being lit on fire. Yeah, that one really sold it because it was interacting with the environment.
And the pterodactyl thing too. Which was that thing. Similar thing to. In this one, Mrs. Carmody's a different kind of beast. Really, she is like Old Testament prophet, kind of nutty, rather than sort of general kooky.
She's
she was much more specific. Nut. It was a religious sort of mania.
Yeah, it really was a twisted Old Testament kind of a thing. And then, where to the point where the propitiation isn't Jesus, it's let's find someone in the store to kill,
Yeah, she was talking about Isaac and things like that, wasn't she? It was very tense, very tense.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to mention it back in the book. It turns into we want the kid, we want the boy, which is chilling.
I really liked Toby Jones as Ollie in this. I thought it was great. And when I first saw him, I've seen this film twice now. One for this recording, really, and both times at the beginning when I first seen him, I thought that's a really odd piece. I didn't see Ollie like that, and why would they cast Toby Jones? But man, he puts in a good performance. He's completely convinced. He's really good. Because I'm used to him being a different kind of actor to what he is here. And he totally works. Totally works.
Well, it was jarring for me. I've been watching Toby Jones a lot in the TV show Wayward Pines.
Right.
Where he plays this sort of mastermind of it. Do you know the whole premise of Wayward Pines?
No, I don't know.
It's basically a guy who builds... He knows that humanity is going to have to survive a cataclysm, so he plans a community that will be built in the future, but he puts a whole bunch of people to sleep, and then they wake up like a couple of thousand years into the future. I've just spoiled the premise for some people, but
it sounds like my wheelhouse, to be honest.
Yeah, you would love it. Yeah, you would love it, but forget what I just said because it might spoil the first few episodes.
Okay. In the book, she's kind of an old witch, a soothsaying old witch, has got all these photos of that. Whereas in this, she's a proper fire and brimstone kind of Old Testament fundamentalist. That's how she feels to me. And I think there's some great scenes with Mrs. Carmody where we get her much more developed. She is wacky. She's a whack job, but there is some stuff here where things happen that kind of confirm what she thinks, which obviously gives her a lot of validation, and she becomes almost ecstatic when she there's a bit where a bug kind of flies at her but leaves her alone. it's kind of interesting.
She takes it as a sign, I think.
Yeah, indeed,
right? She comes up to her, and because it doesn't sting her, she takes it as a validation that she's God's chosen vessel.
And there's also the scene where she goes off and she's praying to God. We just see her praying to God about maybe I can save some of them, though most of them will, I think, like, be taken by a lake of fire or something like that.
Yeah, most of them, they'll swim in the lake of fire, but maybe I can save some. They can't all be bad.
Yeah, that makes much more than the sort of one-dimensional villain. She's like she's basically the good guy in her own story.
Yeah, you recognize that she is sincere. She's sincerely twisted, but she's sincere, and right. She's at least in her own mind.
Yeah. She's kind of starting to take on the mantle of God's interpreter of what's going on, isn't she? And that's the creepy thing, really. She doesn't want attention. She just thinks that she's channeling. She could interpret what's going on in it. And be the voice of God as such, or an interpreter of God, and that kind of
everything that's going on, it's imagery that she's likening to the Book of Revelation. So the smoke, she likens to the mist, and the creatures that are released, all these allegorical things in the Book of Revelation. Although she, go ahead.
No, go carry on.
Yeah, so that's really what's happening. She's so she sees herself as the oracle or interpreter of what's happening.
I have to say, I'm a big fan of Frank Darabont as a director. I think he did a great job with Shawshank and Green Mile, and in this. I really like the way he ratcheted up the tension, the fog, loss of power, the fog rolling in. Then it was on the way to the store, the military trucks sort of racing past. There's something going on, but it's phone's not working. There's all these
so you see shades of a world out of control, which he'll get to in The Walking Dead, but also going back to the Blob remake in 1988, which was a Darabont film.
I didn't realise that. I did not know that. Wow. Okay, that changes. I'm going to have to go back and watch that.
Yeah, he did. He's got a great filmography. He was the writer of Nightmare on Elm Street 3.
Right.
He was the writer on The Blob, not the director, but the writer. He wrote The Fly 2.
I'd like The Fly 2. I mean, it's nowhere near as good as The Fly, but I think it's got some really nice touches, actually, The Fly 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I agree.
To this day, I've only seen it once. I remember the scene where Eric Stoltz is sitting up talking about how much, not pleasure, but how much he gets from looking at the blue lamps where flies get killed. Ultraviolet lamps that trap flies. He says, I can see. I can't remember his dialogue, but I remember the scene, him looking at it and sort of saying, he sees not God, but he sees salvation in it. I thought that was a really interesting scene. Anyway, go ahead.
But so he's got deep roots in genre movie making. So it's all through his career, even after the non-horror stuff that he's been involved with. So he's a big talent.
Indeed. And I also have to say Thomas Jane I thought was kind of perfect as our imperfect David. I thought it was Thomas Jane is a good actor. There's no doubt about it.
He was.
Really
and what you and what you were saying earlier about how in the book his character was a little more provocative. Here, the way they handled both Thomas Jane and his performance, and the way they wrote how his character interacted with the other guys, where you've got the old, you got the townies, and he's the college boy, and there's the resentment. He didn't really do anything provocative to them. He was trying to appeal to them. He was not talking down to anybody.
It was just scared, wasn't it? It was scared for them. It was just desperate, rather than being a bit confrontational. He was just trying to explain as best he could, but they were it was them that were interpreting it as confrontational. That's how it came across in the film.
I'm able to relate. I'm a native New Yorker that's transplanted to rural Pennsylvania. So I've had episodes like that where you go to a store, and I've had comments, like that made where, okay, yeah, you're the college boy, whatever. And
yeah, there's people like that.
Someone has something to say to you. Yeah. I've gotten some of that. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
Kind of like, Matt Hooper in Jaws, spare me the working class hero crap, right?
There's one touch that I've already mentioned how I think that the original story influence of video games. There's one touch where the mist rolls in, where you hear sirens go off, which is straight out of the video game Silent Hill. That's like a key element of that game. And it just, now I don't necessarily think Frank Darabont was like just using it as an echo chamber playing it back. I think it was probably just another way to ratchet up tension, right? A siren going off, ratchet. But it was kind of an interesting plug-in. And also Laurie Holden in this, who plays Amanda and Andrea in The Walking Dead. She was in the film of Silent Hill, which I think came out before this. I could be wrong. So it was kind of a little connection there. Freddie mentioned, Toby Jones was really terrific here. The thing I liked about Ollie is not only was he a thorough good guy, he was very capable. He could handle seemed to be able to handle and he looked like, just a little nerdy dude. But he could handle the situation. He knew what to do when it needed to be done.
He was.
It was great.
Yeah, he's a guy, he's not in a particularly high station in life, but he has a wisdom, and he's able to see what's happening around him. And he was sort of a moderating influence on everybody as much as he could be. And he had the wisdom to pull the trigger when he did, which was a great moment.
He was like a man of action that just did not look like a man of action. He didn't try and use words unless, he was talking to someone rational. He acted, and he always acted well, acted wisely.
That's right.
There's a bit of setup throughout the film, which wasn't in the book, that kind of tries to sort of bring out the humanity of the story a little more. For example, there's Sally the checkout girl, and a like fine kind of romantic but innocent sort of thing with Private Jessup. It's kind of sweet, but it's kind of depressing what happens to them.
It's very sweet, very short-lived.
Yeah, and then there's the burnt guy. He's begging to die, but that gives them the impetus to, they have to get to the pharmacy to sort of help this guy out, give him some pain relief.
Yes.
And man, when I get to that pharmacy, that was a gross set of scenes going on there.
Yeah, and that was the scene that impressed me greatly with the book, because it pre-visualized what they did in the movie so closely.
Yeah.
The whole thing with these spiders that would shoot webs that would just burn you, and
Yeah, it was terrific. It was such a terrific jaw-dropping scene.
Yes.
When that body just erupted with little spiders, it was like, oh my God. It was kind of great. I really liked it. I've already mentioned Sally. What happens with Sally and Private Jessup is not great. It's kind of depressing. Sally gets stung and starts to swell up. It's kind of horrible. And then basically Private Jessup becomes the first sacrifice, doesn't he? And it's interesting that what happens to him kind of mirrors what happened at the Shutter. The guy gets dragged off into the mist in the Shutters when they're trying to help him, but with Private Jessup, they're actually actively pushing him out for the same thing to happen. It's a it's basically saying, it starts with people trying to save each other, and it ends with people deliberately precipitating.
He's seen as this is when they've just gotten wind of what is it called? Project Arrowhead?
Arrowhead, yes.
He's military, and he's heard things that they might be playing. The scientists may be playing with, maybe making a window to another world.
Yeah.
And but it was actually a door that would let things in. And so this everyone's whipped up into a frenzy, and he's stabbed and carried and hurled out the store where he's left, and really as a sacrifice. And so after he is taken, Carmody turns to them and says,
"We'll be all right now, isn't it?" Or something like that.
Yeah, something like, the beast will leave us alone for tonight.
Yeah. But again, fulfilling their own prophecy, kinda.
Yes.
I have to say, I did like all the bug with kind of semi-human features. It was kind of, that added to a level of weirdness to this that I thought really worked well. It could have been laughable. I think they were taking a bit of a chance, but actually it worked really well.
Which one? The one that they encountered at the pharmacy?
The spider with this...
the spider that Jeffrey DeMunn impales?
Yes. And there was a few other bugs where they were slightly more... they had more like teeth than mandibles and stuff like that.
They had teeth and more like eyes to them. Yes.
Those bits reminded me. There was an old episode of The Outer Limits called the Zanti Misfits.
That's right.
Involving these giant ants with little human faces, and it made me think of that, but not necessarily in a bad way. And also, there was a recent film which I feel like I'm the only person that's ever seen this film. Because whenever I talk about it to anyone, they've never heard of it, even never mind seen it. There was a film called Rapturepalooza with Anna Kendrick, which was about the world after the rapture, where all the good people had been taken up, and all that was left was like the souls that weren't taken up, and they had to like get on with this kind of empty planet. But for some reason, all the animals and bugs had turned nasty, but not in a eat you and kill you kind of way, but just they could all talk, and they'd say bad things to you, like saying, "You suck." And you had little bugs sitting there saying, "You suck." Things like
Is this a comedy?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
It would have to be,
it just
right?
It made me think the makers of that must have seen The Mist and thought, we could do something with that, because it felt very similar in terms of these little bugs with human faces, and all the crows on the lines were saying, "Loser, loser," when they called, and things like that. It was a goofy film. As I say, I think I'm the only one that's seen it. I think there was a good mix of characters. My favourite character here was Ollie, actually, as I think I've made clear.
I'd have to agree. I'd say as a leading man, Thomas Jane obviously is the central guy, and he acquits himself very well here. He's the whole range of emotion from, you can see him trying to be strong for his son, but you see moments where he's absolutely terrified. He's fantastic, but Ollie is a very intriguing and unlikely hero. So I think I feel the same way. I think that's why he's so interesting as a character. Yeah,
I kind of like. What do you think of the music in this movie?
I'm not remembering it specifically. It didn't draw my attention in. Sometimes music is sort of meant to manipulate you a little bit, and accuse you to something scary that's going to happen. I don't remember it in that way. It complemented it pretty naturally.
I agree mostly. I think the music was pretty good. It complemented what was going on really well, and didn't intrude. Except towards the end, there was kind of this tribal music played towards the end, which I really liked. I thought it was, it basically, the music started to overwhelm what was going on, and it really worked well for me. Actually, I just wanted to make a note of that. I thought it was.
At what point was that tribal?
It came in. I'm trying to remember when it first started. I think it was as they were driving, but it certainly came in at the very, very end.
Oh, yes.
The revelation. And I really liked it. And then it was the closing credits. Okay, let's get to the end, shall we?
Yes.
So the ending, quite controversial. What did you think of the ending?
I didn't like it. I thought it was cathartically incorrect. I felt like you've been through, you're very invested in this man and his son, and that where I get what Darabont's doing. This is really kind of the equivalent of a Serling ending, a Twilight Zone ending, but on such a downer. I mean, this is, Henry Beamer dropping his glasses, that's a downer, but this was so bad and disturbing that I appreciate the irony of it, but I don't like it. No. I don't like the it's just too much. I think you could have had the same ending where maybe he was nearly going to pull the trigger, and then it's revealed that the mist is lifting, and the military is here to save people. I think that could have been done without it being a cop-out or a hollow Hollywood ending.
I mean, some people suggested you stop the film the moment the fuel runs out. And Thomas Jane looks around at the others, just stop it there, which again wouldn't be very satisfactory. What is interesting, I don't like it at all. I was really quite angry the first time I saw this movie, that at the ending, though I did, because I like the rest of the film so much, I wasn't going to say this is a terrible film by any means, but I just sort of say, I just tell people I didn't like the ending. I wouldn't tell them what it was, but I just say I really did like the ending. It seems to be almost diametrically opposite to what the ending of the book is, which is about hope. This is about total despair. In some ways, I mean, we've already kind of gone on about the sort of allegorical nature of the story. It's almost like, there's rationalism versus belief and this and that. It's almost like in this, hope is the fuel gauge. So as soon as the fuel's gone, that's it. There's no more hope. Let's do this.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. The book, right? Yeah, they hear the word Hartford right on the radio, and it's just this scant thing that gives them hope that there may be people there. Which we've seen similarly in other stories where people are, whether it's 28 Days Later or something like that, where people are picking up staticky hope on the radio that there might be a place to go to. Here, I know it's supposed to provide an ending. I don't know that it really provides an ending. It's just now this guy's whole life is ruined, and
he's got to live
wonder
with
how he can even. How can he live with him? He's probably going to, the next scene, if they made it, would be him finding a gun and shooting himself.
I mean, a slightly better ending would have been exactly what he did, but no, suddenly the mist clears and everything's, he sees what, it seemed like, it did ring true. A mist wouldn't just clear like that for a start. I know that's not really the point of it, but it just seemed goofy.
I would have rather, that's what I was saying. I could see them orchestrating a scene where he's like, steeling himself to point the gun and pull the trigger when someone stops him. The woman next to him pushes the gun away, and because she sees what's happening, and then it's sort of this thank God moment.
Way better. But the only thing positive I can say about it was I kind of appreciated the Darabont had this vision and he saw it through. That was probably one of the most non-Hollywood, what appeared to be a fairly traditional studio film ending I've seen in what I think was a kind of Hollywood film. It was really not something any studio exec would have said, yeah, that's fine. But Darabont did it.
It took a lot of gumption to do it.
Yeah.
So I respect that. I just think it was the wrong choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was the wrong choice. So it kind of it doesn't spoil the film for me. I've seen it a couple of times now, but because I know what's going to happen, I kind of accept it. But it's with a resignation rather than saying, you know what, I can see what he was going for there, and I think it's not bad after all. It's like, nah, that is a bad ending, and I'm never going to like that ending. But that's what it is. It is what it is, kind of thing. Is there anything else to say about the film before we score it?
Well, the only other thing I want to say about that scene is at least it was handled as tastefully as possible. The way it's shown is, just the shots ring out pretty quickly, and it's handled off screen.
There is one other element which you hinted at earlier, is we see the lady that left the store has been rescued.
Yes.
And there's this interesting thing that she cursed everyone just before she left. I hope you'll rot in hell, whatever. And she's the one that's been saved because she had the gumption to go out into the mist at that time, I guess.
Yeah. You see truckloads of people and children being carted away as the mist is clearing, and she's looking down at him as he's looking up as she goes by, and it's just like salt in the wounds of what has just happened to him.
Okay, then let's get to scoring. I'll score first because I always put it on you first, but I'll score first. I'm gonna say I really like this. I thought it was really tense, exciting, well put together, fairly masterful. There were little problems with the CGI, and I didn't like the ending, but I think the casting was great. I like the music. Very little I don't like about it. However, I'm not going to say it's a great film. I don't think it quite reaches that for me. It's a very, very good film for me, though. And I'd give it 8 out of 10.
I'm about there with you. I'd say 8 or 8.5. I'm not deducting points for limitations of CGI or anything like that. I'm not, no technical things. But it's like you said. I think it's a very solid, very well acted, well written film. It's excellent. I just stopped short of putting it into like all-time classic status. I would rate, so for perspective, I would put The Shawshank Redemption above this.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'll put The Green Mile above this too. But I really quite enjoyed it. I think it's probably one of the better sort of it's not a remake, but better versions of the sort of 50s creature feature we've seen in a long time, compared to something like, I don't know, Zombievers or something like that. This is way better. This is way more quality. Most films of that kind aren't quality. They might be fun and enjoyable, but they're not quality. This is a quality piece of filmmaking. So we score about the same, so that's cool. Okay, so we'll wind up there. Next time we're back, it'll probably be in the new year, and we'll be talking about either all of or some part of the Skeleton Crew. I'll just say goodbye from me.
Mark, this has been a lot of fun, as always. Goodbye from me.
Okay.
See you next time, folks.
See you next time.